Hello and welcome to the Sins Review. I'm your host, Jackie Sins. So, I haven't reviewed a vampire movie in a long time. I've just been contemplating and trying my best to let the right one in. Let the Right One In is a Swedish vampire film based on the novel by John Ajvit Lindqvist. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that, so I apologize for butchering these names. The film was released in 2008. It's directed by Tomas Alfredson, stars Lena Leanderson as Ely, not Ellie,
Ellie,
and Care Hedebrandt as Oscar. I know some of you are familiar with the American adaptation Let Me In, starring Chloe Grace Moretz, and it follows pretty closely to the original, of course, taking a few major liberties, but that's a discussion for another time. So basically, we have these two main characters who are children, or at least one of them is a child, while the other one just simply looks like a child, and I'll explain that later. The first one is Oscar, who is a 12-year-old who is mercilessly bullied by some punks at school. They call him names like Little Piggy, and yeah, they just pick on him. Oscar's new neighbor, Ely, is with this older man who one would assume is their father, but that's not really the case. You see, Ely is a vampire. Not surprising, right? I mean, this is a vampire film. Um, and there's a whole situation going on with that. The first time when Oscar and Ely meet, it's like wintertime where they're at. It's like snowing and everything, and she's out there on this climbing thing. It's kind of sort of like a jungle gym, but she's like on top of it with her bare feet, and yeah, that's kind of fucked up. While at first Ely says she can't be Oscar's friend because of reasons, they eventually do form a bond and do become friends. While the start of this movie is rather slow and there's not much going on, it is still has quite a bit of atmosphere, and the performances by the child actors are so believable, and there's time for to develop the characters' relationships first as acquaintances and then eventually as friends. Now, obviously, being a vampire, Ely needs a blood source to sustain herself. And, she obviously has to stay out of the sunlight, you know, and really the problem is she doesn't want to risk being seen by people, so she wouldn't even go out, and hunt during the nighttime, um, and risk it. So the older guy that's with her is pretty much her minion who goes out, kills people, and gathers their blood for her. Well, he botches the job this one time, and Ely has to now go out hunting for her food. This film does display quite a bit of blood and gore, and as you saw, some rather freaky moments as well. So you remember Oscar being bullied, right? Well, he has largely been taking out his frustrations on a tree. Okay. In all seriousness, Ely kinda helps him out with dealing with the bullies by telling him to hit them really hard. As you would expect, Ely and Oscar's relationship grows throughout the film. Before Oscar finds out that Ely is a vampire, she mentions that she's not a little girl. And now, I have heard that in the original novel, it is confirmed that Ely was originally genetically male and had underwent male to female gender reassignment surgery. The film, however, does not confirm this and instead leaves it open to interpretation. So, like, for instance, since she's been around for like 1,000 years or whatever, she likely would not consider herself a little girl anymore. It's sort of like Claudia from Interview with a Vampire. She was turned when she was very young, but then had lived for years beyond the age of 20, so she obviously would want to be considered a woman. Okay, now back to Ely and Oscar. As stated before, they develop more of a friendship, and eventually other feelings do develop between them. I admit they're kind of cute together. Now, I know the circumstances. He's human and she's a vampire, and in a sense, a grown woman trapped in a little girl's body. And speaking of vampires, uh, there are certain, I guess, takes on the classic rules of vampires, like some of their weaknesses, and stuff like that. Like, obviously, there's the sunlight thing, and how one becomes a vampire. And this version, if they're bitten by a vampire and they're not killed in the process, like draining all their blood or snapping their neck or whatever. And yeah, in this movie, there's other folks who end up becoming vampires, but they don't last long. Oh, and if you don't invite a vampire into your home and they enter anyway, uh, bad things happen. So Let the Right One In is not your conventional vampire movie. The still has, some pretty gruesome scenes, but there's always a build up to it, and atmosphere is still at the forefront. I have seen a lot of horror movies, and sometimes I don't necessarily find them super terrifying, um, but I do still feel like a familiar sensation whenever I watch movies like this. And not to say that this movie isn't scary, it still definitely gives the chills and all that. The most important thing to me is not really how scary a horror movie is, or, what any movie for that matter. I care about the story, the acting, and the characters. The story here is great. The characters are good, and the acting is great, especially the child actors of our two main characters. Their chemistry is just about the best I've seen with any characters. There's no rush to get anywhere, and that makes it feel a lot more genuine. And I mean, they are children, so obviously we would not expect anything like this. I give Let the Right One In full sins. This has been the Sins Review. I'm Jackie Sins, and yeah, I suppose I could review Let Me In next time, assuming I haven't seen Morbius by that point.